to White Reader's TV film review and preview. I'm Andrew Wright. Releasing in cinemas this weekend is supernatural slasher film Black Phone 2, a sequel to 2021's The Black Phone. The film stars Ethan Hawke, Mason Thames, and Madeline McGraw, reprising their roles from the previous film. So the film takes place in 1982, about 4 years after the events of the first film, and revolves around Thames's Finney struggling with the trauma of his kidnapping by Hawke's grabber character, who he subsequently killed, while McGraw's Gwen starts having visions of mutilated children and a ringing phone. So this film goes more full-on supernatural horror compared to the first film, as Ethan Hawke's character died in the first film, but it returns in this film as a vengeful spirit who remains the villain of the story. So whereas the supernatural horror was sort of only hinted at in the first film through the use of the titular black phone, and it's a bit more full-on in this one. The film so far has received over 80% positive reviews from critics, who praise that this sequel builds on the first film to make this film scarier. I can't remember if I reviewed the first film on this programme, but in my Letterboxd review I praised the film for working better as a human drama with a good writing and performances, so I'm actually looking forward to this sequel, despite them upping the violence of it. So Black Phone 2 is in cinemas now. Last week, Tron Ares arrived in cinemas as the third film in the Tron series. The film stars Jared Leto as Ares, a super-intelligent program who gradually gains sentience, independence, and permanence. The film also stars Greta Lee, Evan Peters, Jodie Turner-Smith, and Gillian Anderson, with Jeff Bridges reprising his role as Kevin Flynn from the previous films. So I went to see the film last Saturday, and I was a bit disappointed. I thought Leto was wooden, but that's to be expected. The visual effects, I thought there were some scenes where the visual effects looked really unpolished, and the soundtrack was headache-inducing. Like, I got a headache. It was so, like, the sound mix was very bad because the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack was like quite loud, whereas the dialogue was at an ordinary level. So, but I just put that down to a problem with the film rather than a problem with the projecting. I gave the film 2 stars out of 5. So Tron Ares is in cinemas now. Released on home video this week was Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Tom Cruise's 8th and final installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. The film stars Tom Cruise, Hayley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Esai Morales, Pom Klementieff, Henry Czerny, and Angela Bassett. The film is a continuation of 2023's Dead Reckoning and revolves around Cruise's Ethan Hunt and his team continuing their mission to prevent a rogue artificial intelligence called the Entity from destroying all of humanity. So this was my first time watching the film, and I was actually thoroughly disappointed. The writing is terrible, the directing is poor, the editing is poor, and it's at least 30 minutes too long, but fans who have invested 30 years in the franchise will find the film satisfying, because the original Brian De Palma Mission Impossible was released in 1996. It's now 2025. That is 29 years to get 8 films out. And it's disappointing, because I wanted to like it after after I rewatched Dead Reckoning the other day, just to get myself caught up for Final Reckoning, and Dead Reckoning was way more boring than I remember it being, because I remember not having a good time with it the first time round. I said in my review it was very 50-50. But rewatching it, it was more boring than I thought it was, and but it was sort of saved by the third act. But Final Reckoning was just sort of boring all around. But yeah, 2 stars out of 5. Even Tron Ares was better than it. So Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is on home video now. Also released on home video this week was the anime film Blue Lock episode Nagi. The film is an adaptation of both the Blue Lock manga series, its anime adaptation, and the spin-off manga episode Nagi. Blue Lock revolves around 300 teenage Japanese football players who they all play in the striker position, and they get recruited by an enigmatic man called Ego, who works on the behalf of the Japan Football Union, to create a striker capable of leading Japan's national team to victory at the FIFA World Cup. Because the setup in the story is that Japan finished 16th in 2018. So part of Blue Lock is to create a striker who can lead the national team to the World Cup victory. Whereas the main series focuses on the character Isagi, episode Nagi focuses on Seishiro Nagi, an apathetic and listless player. He wasn't really into football before, he was more into games, but he follows his rich friend Ryo into football, so they both start playing football, and they become sort of the best players around in their little in the sort of around the teams they play, when they both get recruited to the Blue Lock program. So episode Nagi recaps the first season of the TV anime, but it's from the perspective of Nagi, whereas this anime is about Isagi, but this film is about Nagi, and it's about Nagi discovering his own talent for the game outside of his friendship with Ryo. Because how their dynamic works is that Nagi's a very talented player, Ryo less such, but he sort of relies on Nagi, and how that works is as Nagi interacts with more players like Isagi, he starts to detach himself from Ryo, Ryo then starts to come into his own and just discover his own talent outside of his friendship with Nagi. So the film features all the actors from the TV anime reprising their roles, with the main cast being Nobunaga Shimazaki, Yuma Uchida, Tasuku Kaito, Kazuki Ura, Junichi Suabe, and Hiroshi Kamiya. So I don't think there's any new cast members joining for this film, because it's pretty much just there's no new main characters joining for this film. So I watched this. I watched it last September when it started streaming on Crunchyroll. I can't remember if I reviewed it on this program back then, so I'll review it now for the home video release. Admittedly, I probably should have rewatched it on home video just to refresh myself. But I'm waiting to do that once I rewatch Blue Lock. So as someone who quite liked season 1 of the Blue Lock anime, because I actually quite liked season 1, I was a bit conflicted about episode Nagi. It does have all those crazy football moments that gripped you in the first season, and Nagi's development as a character is interesting because it's about him, because he was originally listless in the beginning, but then it's about him coming into his own through his interactions with all these other people. But I didn't like how they reanimated some moments with 3D CGI, which, as it turned out, was an omen of things to come. Plus, the perspective shift means from Isagi to Nagi means that there's a lot of things that lose context, like in the film, that they've cut some of the context from the series, like Isagi's weapon. That's how they refer to like their key football skills in the show. They're called weapons. Don't ask. That's a different video. They cut a lot of material from the second half of season 1, so they essentially took 24 episodes. It took about like 5-6 hours of content and cut it down to less than 2 hours. Plus, it ends with a spoiler for season 2, the versus under 20 arc, which aired after this film was released. So the last scene of the film sort of is from the middle of season 2. Which, if you watch episode Nagi before season 2, it's a big spoiler. I gave the film 3 stars out of 5. Blue Lock episode Nagi is on home video now, and I highly recommend picking up the Blu-rays for season 1, because I like season 1. It was quite nice. It was quite a lot of fun, and it ruins real football for you. That's all I have for this week, but be sure to check back next week, where it's another busy week. I'll be talking the home video release of Jurassic World Rebirth. Looking forward to watching that. Home video of Fantastic Four First Steps. I saw that in cinema a couple months ago. So you know my opinion. Next week's the theatrical release of Chainsaw Man Reze Arc, and Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere. So see you next time.